The fork slipped from someone's hand and clattered against porcelain. Not mine. His. Bradley Knox, the man who once stood in a courthouse and told a judge we had grown apart, was staring at me like I had just set the building on fire. But I hadn't done anything. Not yet. The restaurant doors hadn't even opened. Not yet. And still, the humiliation was already spreading through my chest like spilled wine. The valet had taken my keys 20 minutes earlier. I remember smoothing my navy blazer in the reflection of the restaurant's glass doors. The kind of glass so spotless it shows you exactly who you are and every insecurity you're trying to hide. Crystal chandeliers glowed overhead. Silverware chimed. Deals worth millions floated between tables over the scent of seared scallops and truffle oil. I wasn't here to impress anyone. I was here because Nolan had called in a favor. And I pay my debts. My phone buzzed just as I stepped inside. Running 20 minutes late. Grab a seat near the west wall. You'll know the table. Great. Alone. In a room where people measure your worth before you sit down. I walked past tailored suits and silk gowns, heels clicking against marble. I kept my shoulders back. Controlled breath. Neutral expression. Then I saw him. Bradley Knox. My ex-husband. Standing near the bar like he owned the air everyone else was breathing. His hand rested around a crystal tumbler. Expensive whiskey. 3 men leaned toward him, laughing. He looked polished. Successful. Like the life he chose fit him perfectly. His eyes caught mine. The laugh died mid-breath. I didn't slow down. Didn't change direction. But I felt his stare follow me. Bianca. I stopped. Of course I did. He had already crossed half the room. I didn't know you'd be here, he said. His tone suggested he wished I wasn't. Business dinner, I replied. His eyes swept over my blazer. My heels. The simple gold studs in my ears. That look. The one that catalogued and dismissed in the same breath. Business, he repeated. Which company are you with these days? I'm representing a silent partner. Ah. His smile cooled. Still keeping things modest. There it was. 2 years later, and he still knew exactly where to press. I could have defended myself. Could have listed my clients. My portfolio. Instead, I gave him the only thing that truly unsettles men like Bradley. Calm. Enjoy your evening. I turned and walked away. But I heard it. That's her, one of his friends asked. Yeah, Bradley said. We were married. Briefly. What happened? A beat. She wasn't built for this world. The words landed like a slap. I focused on the menu in front of me. Microgreens. Citrus foam. $12 sparkling water. I would not cry here. I would not give him that. 18 hours earlier. I almost didn't come tonight. I had stared at the invitation in my inbox, fingers hovering over decline. But Nolan's message had been clear. This investor dinner could shift everything. We need you there. So here I was. Back in a world Bradley once said I'd never survive in. A waiter appeared. May I start you with something? Water. My voice didn't shake. Small victory. 20 minutes passed. The room filled. A woman in silver glanced at me, then at Bradley's table. Whispered something to her companion. I could read it in their faces. Why is she here? Then Nolan's assistant appeared, flushed and breathless. Ms. Hartley? I'm so sorry. There's been a mix-up. Of course there has. You're actually seated at the main table. The main table? With the primary investors. My pulse kicked. I followed her across the room. And that's when it got worse. Because Bradley was seated there too. 3 seats down. Directly in my line of sight. He stiffened when I sat. The older man at the head of the table adjusted his cufflinks. Sharp eyes. Calculating. "We're just waiting on Mr. Lawson," he said. A ripple moved around the table. "Gabriel Lawson?" someone asked. "The very same." Even Bradley straightened. "Lawson Capital. 12 billion in assets. The man who turned a failing tech portfolio into an empire before 40. This dinner mattered. I could see it in Bradley's rigid shoulders. The first course arrived. Microgreens arranged like art. Conversations swirled. Market forecasts. European expansion. Risk mitigation. Then. "And what sector are you in, Ms. Hartley?" I folded my napkin carefully. "Technology and infrastructure. I work across multiple sectors." Bradley's fork paused midair. "She's being humble," he cut in smoothly. Bianca's still, exploring. Trying to find her footing. Silence. The older man studied me. Bradley continued, voice dipped in faux kindness. "Not everyone thrives in high-stakes environments. Some people are better suited to smaller ventures." He wanted me to flinch. To shrink. 2 years ago, I would have. Tonight. I set my fork down. "You're right," I said softly. "Not everyone can handle pressure." He smiled. "Victory. That's why I prefer to work quietly." His smile faltered. Just slightly. And that tiny shift? It felt like oxygen. The front doors opened. Conversations cut mid-sentence. Even the waitstaff straightened. Gabriel Lawson walked in like gravity bent around him. Charcoal suit. No tie. Dark hair brushed with silver at the temples. He didn't scan the room. He walked with purpose. Toward us. Toward me. Bradley's face drained of color. Gabriel stopped beside my chair. His hand rested lightly on my shoulder. Warm. Certain. "Sorry I'm late, my wife." The word detonated across the table. Wife. Someone's fork hit porcelain. Bradley made a strangled sound. Gabriel pulled out the chair beside me and sat. His fingers laced with mine under the table. Steady. Familiar. "You started without me," he murmured, glancing at my plate. "You said you'd be late." I said I'd try. The older investor cleared his throat. "Mr. Lawson, we weren't aware." "That I was married?" Gabriel's tone remained pleasant. Controlled. "I prefer to keep my personal life private." His thumb brushed my knuckles. "My wife prefers it even more." Bradley stared at our joined hands like they were a weapon. 14 months. 14 months of quiet partnership. 14 months of building something Bradley once insisted I couldn't sustain. And now? Now the room was recalibrating. And this was only the beginning. If you think this night can't get more explosive, trust me, you haven't seen what Bradley does next. If you're already invested in this story, hit subscribe now. Because what happens at this table will shift power in ways none of them saw coming. And someone is about to make a mistake they can't undo. Gabriel didn't release my hand. Not when the appetizers were cleared. Not when the questions started flying. Not even when Bradley finally found his voice. "You're married?" Bradley asked, but the question wasn't really for Gabriel. It was for me. Like I'd hidden something from him. Gabriel answered anyway. 14 months. His tone was smooth, controlled. Small ceremony. Private. Bradley swallowed. I didn't know. You didn't ask, I said quietly. The air shifted. That subtle, electric shift when people realized the power dynamic they assumed was wrong. The older investor introduced himself. Richard Voss. Gabriel nodded. I've reviewed your European housing proposal. Bradley straightened at that. Ah. There it is. The sustainable housing pitch. The one he had once told me would change everything. Gabriel cut into his steak with deliberate calm. Interesting model, he said. Bradley leaned forward. We're still finalizing capital commitments. Still? Gabriel's eyebrow lifted slightly. A micro-expression. Almost invisible. Unless you know him. I felt his thumb trace a slow line across my knuckles under the table. Grounding me. Or reminding me. Then he turned to me casually. Bianca, didn't you review a modular housing concept last month? Bradley froze. All eyes shifted. I could deflect. Stay small. Play silent partner. But Bradley's words echoed in my head. She wasn't built for this world. I dabbed my napkin against my lips and looked directly at Richard Voss. Promising concept, I said evenly. But the financial model assumes market conditions that don't exist. Bradley's jaw tightened. It's a forward projection. It's optimistic, I corrected gently. And optimism doesn't offset flawed demand forecasting. Silence. The kind that hums. Gabriel didn't interrupt. Didn't rescue. He just watched me. Let me own the space. Richard Voss leaned back. And your recommendation? I advised against investment. Bradley's fork clinked against his plate. You advised who? He demanded before he could stop himself. There it was. The crack. Gabriel answered calmly. Lawson Capital consults external analysts. Bradley's eyes snapped to him. Then back to me. You're evaluating projects for Lawson? I consult for multiple firms. You never asked, I repeated. His face flushed deep red. 17 hours left. I had told Gabriel earlier that I didn't want a scene tonight. He promised me something different. Not a scene, he'd said in the car. A correction. Now I understood. Richard Voss cleared his throat. What kind of returns are we talking about on your advisories, Ms. Hartley? I hesitated. Not because I doubted the number. But because saying it would change the room permanently. 32% average compound growth across 7 companies over 2 years. A low whistle. 32, someone murmured. Gabriel's voice was soft but firm. She's selective. Bradley stared at me like he'd discovered a second version of reality. When we were married, he started. Careful. He didn't want to say the wrong thing. But pride pushed him anyway. You were cautious. I still am. That's not how I remember it. I met his gaze. That's because you were busy telling me to think bigger instead of noticing I was thinking deeper. The words landed clean. No tremble. No crack. Bradley blinked. And for the first time that night, he looked unsure. The main course arrived. Filet mignon. Truffle reduction. The scent of rosemary filled the air. But I wasn't tasting anything. I felt heat crawling up my spine. The conversation shifted. Questions started coming to me. Risk mitigation strategies. Emerging tech sectors. Infrastructure stability in Eastern Europe. Each answer built something. Not ego. Presence. I wasn't shrinking anymore. I was expanding. And Bradley was shrinking in real time. Then came the moment I didn't expect. Richard Voss raised his glass. To Gabriel Lawson. Crystal chimed. And to his wife, he added with a knowing nod. Who apparently has been shaping capital returns alongside him. Glasses lifted. All but one. Bradley's stayed on the table. His knuckles white. Gabriel leaned toward me slightly. Are you comfortable? He murmured. You know I hate crowds. I know. I'm tolerating them. His lips twitched. That's my girl. Across the table, Bradley's expression changed. It wasn't anger anymore. It was recognition. The kind that comes too late. But the night wasn't done. Because humiliation doesn't go quietly. It claws. And Bradley wasn't finished trying to reclaim ground. As dessert plates were cleared, he leaned forward. You know, he said, voice almost conversational, it's funny. No one responded. He kept going. When we were together, you said you didn't want to attach your identity to someone else's success. His eyes flicked to Gabriel. And now? Ah. There it is. The insinuation. The implication that my accomplishments were borrowed. The table went still. This was the moment. Person versus person. Person versus society. Woman with powerful husband. Old narrative. I felt something rise in my chest. Not shame. Not fear. Fury. Protective. Steady. For the record, I said calmly, my contracts were signed before our wedding. Gabriel didn't move. Didn't speak. He didn't need to. And I kept my involvement quiet because I didn't want the Lawson name influencing decisions. Richard Voss looked intrigued. You chose anonymity? I chose integrity. Bradley's lips parted. Closed. You could have told me, he muttered. I almost laughed. You would have believed me? Silence. The kind that answers for you. If you're watching this and you've ever had someone doubt you, dismiss you, or rewrite your story to fit their ego, stay with me. Because what Bradley says next? It's the kind of thing that shatters a room. Hit subscribe now, because the twist coming in the next few minutes changes everything. And trust me, you won't see it coming. Bradley exhaled sharply. I thought you needed me. There it was. Not arrogance. Confession. Soft. Ugly. Honest. The room shifted again. He wasn't attacking now. He was unraveling. When we divorced, he continued, voice lower, I thought you'd struggle. I did. For 3 months, I did. The memory hit fast. The empty apartment. The silence. The doubt. The night staring at my laptop wondering if he was right. I swallowed. I did struggle, I admitted. The table watched. But I wasn't performing for them anymore. I struggled until I remembered who I was before I started trying to be what you needed. Gabriel's hand tightened gently at my back. Support. Not control. Bradley's eyes glistened slightly. And that shook me more than the insults. Because this wasn't the confident man at the bar anymore. This was someone realizing he miscalculated. Badly. But the night still had one more escalation. Because Richard Voss leaned forward slowly. Ms. Hartley, he said, would you consider reviewing our European portfolio directly? Gabriel turned his head slightly. Not possessive. Just attentive. Bradley looked like he'd been punched. I'd consider it, I replied. Under one condition. Every eye locked on me. I evaluate independently. No influence. No preferential treatment. Voss smiled slowly. Of course. And just like that, the balance of power at the table had fully inverted. But the real twist? The one none of them saw coming? It hadn't even been spoken yet. And it was about to change everything. Dessert plates were cleared. Lavender panna cotta. Honey drizzle. No one touched it. The air had changed. Not tense. Not hostile. Strategic. Richard Voss leaned forward again, fingers steepled. There's one more thing, he said slowly. Lawson Capital's expansion fund for Q4, we're considering restructuring leadership oversight. Bradley straightened. There it was. The real reason he was here. Not networking. Not dinner. He needed funding. And Gabriel hadn't committed. Restructuring how? Bradley asked carefully. Voss glanced at Gabriel. Then at me. We're exploring a joint advisory chair position. A pause. With Ms. Hartley. The silence was violent. Bradley blinked once. Twice. You're putting her in oversight of the European housing sector? He asked. Not just housing, Voss corrected. Infrastructure allocation across 3 markets. Bradley's entire future, balanced on a portfolio I might now influence. He turned to Gabriel. You're serious? Gabriel's voice was even. I don't appoint advisors based on sentiment. Bradley's jaw flexed. You're giving her power over my project. I felt it then. The shift from pride to threat. Person versus person. Person versus power. Person versus self. Because here was the truth. I could sink him. One recommendation. One report. One signature. The temptation brushed against me like a cold draft. Remember what he said. She wasn't built for this world. I could prove him wrong. Brutally. Publicly. Permanently. Gabriel sensed it. His hand pressed lightly at the small of my back. Grounding. Not steering. He would never steer me. The choice was mine. 16 hours left. The next 12 months of capital strategy would be finalized tomorrow morning. That was the real clock. This wasn't just a dinner. This was leverage. Bradley's voice lowered. This is personal. No, I said calmly. It's financial. You'd enjoy this, wouldn't you? He asked quietly. Watching it collapse. A micro-conflict. A test. I looked at him for a long moment. And what I saw wasn't the man who belittled me. It wasn't the polished executive at the bar. It was someone afraid. Afraid that the narrative he built about me, about us, was wrong. Bradley, I said softly, if your model holds up, it won't collapse. His lips parted. He had no response to that. Because for the first time, this wasn't about ego. It was about merit. Then came the moment that changed everything. Richard Voss slid a slim black folder across the table. To make it official, he said. Gabriel didn't touch it. Neither did Bradley. It stopped in front of me. Inside. Preliminary oversight authority. Conditional. Effective immediately upon signature. My pulse thundered. This was it. The impossible choice. Sign it and become the gatekeeper to Bradley's future. Refuse it and walk away with dignity, but no leverage. Gabriel leaned closer, his voice barely audible. Whatever you choose, I'm with you. Not choose this. Not take it. Just. With you. And that broke something open inside me. Unexpected kindness. Steady support. The kind I didn't have before. Bradley stood suddenly. His chair scraped harshly across marble. "Excuse me," he muttered. He walked toward the bar. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just unraveling. The restaurant noise resumed slowly around us. I stared at the folder. My name printed cleanly at the top. Bianca Hartley. Built for this world. Or not. 15 hours left. Gabriel and I stepped outside for air. Cool night wrapped around us. The valet lights flickered against polished cars. I exhaled hard. I didn't come here for revenge, I said. I know. But I could end him. Gabriel turned to face me fully. Streetlight catching silver in his hair. Would that make you who you want to be? That question. Not judgment. Just truth. I looked back through the restaurant window. Bradley stood alone at the bar now. Shoulders slumped. No audience. No bravado. Just a man confronting his own miscalculation. I don't want to destroy him, I whispered. I want him to understand. Gabriel nodded once. Then show him. When we returned to the table, Bradley was seated again. Quieter. Richard Voss tapped the folder lightly. Decision? All eyes. No escape. I opened it. Pen resting neatly inside. I signed. But not where they expected. There was a clause. A revision line. I wrote beneath it. Independent review contingent upon transparent financial disclosure from all affiliated projects. Including Bradley's. Not above him. Not against him. With scrutiny applied equally. I closed the folder. I don't sabotage, I said evenly. I audit. Richard Voss smiled slowly. Gabriel's eyes softened. Bradley looked, stunned. You're not going to block it? He asked. If it's sound, it survives. His throat worked as he swallowed. And then something happened I never expected. He nodded. Once. Respect. Reluctant. Earned. But the devastation? It didn't come from him. It came from Richard Voss. Because he leaned back and said casually, there is one more detail you should all be aware of. The air tightened. Lawson Capital has already acquired a controlling interest in Knox Developments. Bradley froze. What? Gabriel's jaw tightened slightly. Voss continued. Through intermediaries. The purchase finalized this afternoon. Bradley turned slowly to Gabriel. You bought my company? Gabriel's voice was controlled. It was underperforming. You said you passed on it last year. I did. Bradley's voice cracked. And then you circled back? I invest when conditions shift. The blood drained from Bradley's face. You own me. Silence. Heavy. Devastating revelation. The twist none of us had fully known. Gabriel hadn't told me. Not because he was hiding it. But because negotiations had been ongoing. This wasn't about revenge. It was about strategy. Bradley laughed once. Sharp. Broken. So this whole night? No, I interrupted firmly. This isn't about humiliation. It feels like it. That's your projection. His eyes flicked to me. Hurt. Anger. Something close to grief. You could dismantle everything, he said quietly. And there it was. The silent grief. The recognition that power had shifted permanently. Gabriel stepped forward slightly. Not aggressive. Protective. I have no interest in dismantling viable operations, he said. But leadership changes may be necessary. Bradley looked between us. So that's it? I held his gaze. No. That's the market. He let out a slow breath. And for the first time, he looked small. Not because we crushed him, but because reality did. If you think this is where it ends, you're wrong. Because power doesn't just change hands quietly. It tests you. It tempts you. And what happens next will determine whether this was justice or the beginning of something far darker. If you're still here, subscribe and turn on notifications. Part 2 drops soon, and the fallout from this acquisition will shake everything you think you know. Outside, the valet brought the car around. An understated black sedan. Not flashy. Not loud. Gabriel opened my door. I paused before getting in. Did you know about the acquisition? I asked quietly. I knew it was in motion. And you didn't tell me. It wasn't finalized. That's not what I asked. He held my gaze. Honest. I didn't want you to feel like tonight was orchestrated. A beat. It wasn't. I searched his face. Found no manipulation. Only calculation. And care. I don't need rescuing, I said softly. I know. I rescued myself. Yes, you did. His hand brushed my cheek gently. And that's exactly why I married you. My throat tightened. City lights blurred slightly. Maybe 1 or 2 tears. Not from weakness. From release. We drove away from the restaurant. From the chandeliers. From Bradley Knox standing under soft golden light, realizing the woman he once dismissed now held oversight on his future. I leaned back against the seat. Silent. Processing. Because here's the truth no one talks about. Winning doesn't feel loud. It feels quiet. Heavy. Responsibility weighs more than revenge ever could. And tomorrow morning, at 9 a.m., I would sit in a boardroom and decide whether Knox Developments restructures or collapses. And this time, there would be no audience, no applause, just numbers, and my signature. Part 2, The Boardroom Decision, drops soon. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss it. And tell me in the comments, if you were in my position, would you protect his company? Or let it fall? Because sometimes the hardest part of power is deciding how merciful to be.